Hello and welcome back to this special live edition of American Black Journal. What do residents think about the status of race relations in the Metro Detroit area? The Detroit Journalism Cooperative wanted to find out. So with funding from the Knight Foundation, the DJC was able to conduct a comprehensive poll of 600 people. To share some of the results is Kirk Metzger. He's the founder of Data Driven Detroit and the mayor of Pleasant Ridge. Thanks for being here, Kirk.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, so talk about what you learned in this survey about the way people think about race relations, how important they think it is, and what they think we ought to be doing about it.
Well, I think one of the, you were asking the previous interviewees about the good news.
Yeah.
I think the good news is that some of the opinions are very much similar across white and African American, and there is some small population of other, which is a mix.
Yeah.
But the idea that race relations and the idea of discussing race relations is very important. It's one of the major issues that people are addressing. They feel that it is important to talk about it, that we need to be addressing it. Obviously, African Americans think it's a little more important than whites do. I think African Americans in this area have also seen over the years, they feel that race relations have diminished somewhat.
Yeah.
So they're not as positive.
Right. I mean, there's a gap between what direction people think things are headed in.
Right.
Whites tend to think we're headed in the right direction. African Americans less likely to believe that.
And I think we've seen that nationally. I mean, with when Obama gets elected, then everybody feels race relations, everything's fine, right? And whites have felt that things, what else do you want, right?
Yeah.
So, and so we see a little bit of that, but it's closer in this region than I see in some of the national polls, which is good news.
Right.
But also there's questions, so, okay, here's our race relations.
We've got a graphic up on the screen.
Generally good, generally bad. And you see that whites feel it's generally good, a little bit higher rate. But as I said, what has happened is you see that African Americans are seeing the last 10 years, when asked about how they changed over the last 10 years, African Americans have seen them kind of gotten worse, and whites have seen them get better. So there is that.
What about the level of dialogue that's necessary to sort of get past that? What do whites and blacks think about that dialogue? I hear from a lot of white people that they're tired of talking about race and that they don't feel like it's something they need to address. African Americans are more eager to try to get to dialogue because I think they think it is a pathway to change.
Well, I tend to agree with African Americans that it needs to be, that we need to talk about it. It's easy to say, well, we've talked about it enough, just like everything is fine. But it's similar to people misunderstanding white privilege, as you talk about. They don't recognize that, so they think everything is fine. We don't have to talk about it. We've talked about it forever. We've gone to our diversity seminars. We feel good. We've done the work, but I think the discussions have to be there.
Yeah. What are some of the other things that we learned in the survey?
Well, there was also, the question of is it a major, is race relations, discussions around race relations, is a major concern, much of a concern. And so you can see African Americans, again, the good news is everybody thinks it's a concern. There was something called major versus significant, and African Americans tend to put it a little bit higher on the scale. But the good news is that everybody feels it's an issue that needs to be talked about. The other question that was asked was, what are the major issues? And I think what we've seen with the movement of African Americans out of Detroit over the last 10, 15 years, you talked about the changing in Oakland County. Well, Macomb County has seen tremendous change.
Absolutely.
And out Wayne County. But the idea is that everybody is looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
Whether you're white, African American, Latino, Middle Eastern, whatever, you're looking for education, good school systems. You're looking for safety.
Right.
You're looking for jobs. We didn't ask about transportation, job opportunity. It would be nice to have transportation as well.
We're working on that.
And while whites think roads are a little more important than race relations, race relations is at least like the number 4 in terms of the group. So.
One of the interesting things I thought of when I saw this graphic that's on the screen now is these issues are teased out from race in this survey, but in many ways they become proxies for race. So education, school districts, what school district am I going to choose? How do I want to pay for schools? that's overlaid with race and racial tensions. Crime, of course, significant racial components in the way people see that issue and make decisions. And then, of course, jobs and the economy have deep racial roots. So really, these are all sort of swirled together, I think, in the way that they manifest themselves, and perhaps in the way we ought to deal with them.
Right, they are, and we talked about it, not with you, but with somebody else at the station, about the issue of class also kind of plays into it. Race and class, and we're not going to talk about that now, but that's something that needs to be talked about. But it's also, you talked about changes in the dynamics in Oakland County. When you talk about education, crime, and you talk about the mixing, as we see demographic change and we see African Americans moving into the suburbs, and you start seeing the changes in school systems. We've talked about that before. You start to see those tipping points. And how does that play out in terms of education and what people think of quality education, what people think of crime? Do they think all of a sudden the code words that we start using, that it's becoming a little more dangerous, or it's becoming the schools are losing their quality, things are going down, it's becoming much more difficult to get a good education? I think these are issues that we need to talk about, and a lot of it is that combination of the two.
Right. As I mentioned, you are the mayor of Pleasant Ridge, which is a community in South Oakland County, shares a school district with Ferndale, which is right on the border with Detroit and has experienced a significant demographic change. Talk about how these issues look from that seat. I don't know that I've ever asked you that. You're fairly new to the job.
It's an interesting, and one of the, I just want you to know, one of the jobs of a Pleasant Ridge mayor is to sit at the pool and get a tan and watch what's going on in this. Just want you to know that was one of the job descriptions, and that's why I went after it.
You're doing that really well.
I'm doing it really well. The rest of it, not so well, but that I'm doing really well. Yeah, it's always been. I've lived in Ferndale and lived in Pleasant Ridge, and our kids went to Ferndale schools, and we've watched the dynamics with schools of choice. The Ferndale school system, the population within the Ferndale school district is about 25% African American. The school system is 75% African American. And you start to have the dynamics. You have Royal Oak Township, you have Some Oak Park, you have Pleasant Ridge, and you have Ferndale. Very different,
really different
racial dynamics. And it was kind of the way, by closing schools, you start getting the entire district going to one school. It wasn't kind of segmented off. And so there are a lot of discussions around, it becomes socioeconomic, it becomes issues of, am I really, do I see that the quality of education is going down? And Pleasant Ridge tends to, while we have a lot of supporters for Ferndale schools, we certainly vote for all the education bond issues and things like that. But there are a lot of parents that go to Berkeley, Royal Oak.
They opt out.
Opt out. So it's a real discussion.
Thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.